Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to week 6 in CU 122. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to another fine live session here in 122. Great job on week 5. You guys rocked the house. Chef Suzanne and I were discussing that briefly a few moments ago, and I think the majority of you did a great job. There were a couple of people that had a little bit of a challenge following specific instructions, which we will get to here in the next few minutes. But overall, fantastic. And I hope everybody had plenty of pancakes over the past week. And I also hope that everybody enjoyed those omelets. I'm looking forward to hearing Chef Suzanne's feedback. Before we get going on Chef Suzanne's portion, please, if everybody could please take the mid-course survey, which is located on the top of the class page. You were sent out a class message earlier today. It was also placed in the weekly video. It is also in this presentation as well. The reason we're asking for this is it really helps us to grow and evolve the program. We're not interested in hearing that, oh, I didn't care for whatever the case, what can we do to make the program better? And I mean, you're the students and you guys oftentimes have awesome ideas. And so we would really appreciate the feedback. It also counts towards extra credit at the end of the program, and it'll work as a nice boost to your grades. So take advantage of it, please. If anybody has any questions, you can get a hold of me on the side after the class, and I'll be glad to answer them for you. Chef Suzanne in the house. How was week 5 in CU 122?
It was so awesome.
Yeah?
I was just mentioning this before class, but I need pancakes so very badly. I wasn't like drawn to hurry and like run and get an omelet. I guess maybe because I eat eggs and omelets all the time, but I don't eat a whole lot of pancakes, and man, they look so good. I was just desperately needing pancakes. Once you look at, I don't even know, hundreds of pancakes, it's really hard not to want a pancake, and I'm desperate for a pancake.
So should we have a 10-minute long class?
Yes. Because I really need some pancakes. So I may have to like holler in and tell somebody to make me some pancakes. I married a chef. He can make pancakes. He'd be fine.
Uber, right? Grubhub.
Can you Uber pancakes? I'm gonna have to Google Ubering pancakes.
I think you can Uber or Grubhub, IHOP or DoorDash or one of those.
I had no idea. I hadn't even thought about it. I'm thinking about it now. I'm not even gonna lie. But no, they did such a good job this week. I have my little, my awesome little, hang on, I'm trying to get it set up here, because they rocked these this week for absolutely sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look.
This class is consistent, aren't they?
Yes, that's a really good way to put it. They're definitely consistent.
Yeah.
My little picture doodads. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome.
Wow,
so,
look at that.
Can you see now why I need pancakes? I'm just saying. This is what I got to look at. And I like this picture because you just see that nice fluffy pancakes and that beautiful omelet with, I don't even think there's even any brown on it.
That was a beautiful textbook omelet right there, by the way.
Yes, it was. And then here those fluffy pancakes, and then the batter up in the top corners. Did such a nice job on the batter.
Great job.
Wow. See? You see what I'm saying? Wow. This is why my job is hard some days.
Wow, that's a beautiful omelet, beautiful pancakes. Look at that presentation.
Look at that. Hector rocked it. He absolutely rocked it. And I don't know where he lives and he gets beautiful berries. We don't get beautiful berries right now. So he's somewhere lucky to be able to get gorgeous berries.
Nice. Look at that.
Again, yeah, can you see that? The texture inside there is just spot on. That is the epitome of fluffy pancakes.
Wow.
And here's some more gorgeous presentations.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And then Sabina looking like she made a little compote, and then she's got that gorgeous
beautiful omelet, Sabina. Great job. Mm-hmm. Great job.
And then here again, those fluffy pancakes are killing me. I'm telling you. You don't even have to put anything on a pancake for it to be killing me this week.
Wow.
And then there's Hector again, rocking it with some presentation.
Wow. Got a little artistic ability in him, huh?
Yeah, he does.
Wow.
And
Great
so, and I've said it,
job.
I could pick many more. I saw some great looking presentations, some gorgeous pancakes, and the omelets that have, to me, an omelet needs to have no brown. I mean, just if any brown, just a teeny tiniest bit. And to me, I want it set and cooked and beautiful and yellow, because those browned eggs taste kind of bitter and tough. Whereas
different texture too. Yeah.
yes. And when they're nice and yellow like that, they're so good.
And I was also impressed. A number of those omelets were done French fold.
Yes.
Which is that's a real upscale thing that we look for in industry. Denny's or IHOP will do the traditional fold over or saute the ingredients, add the egg, and then just fold the whole thing over. Whereas a little bit more upscale, a little bit higher trained culinarian will do the French fold with the ingredients in the middle. So hats off. That is great to hear. Yeah. We also had a great on-time submission rate this week, which is wonderful. So hats off to everybody out there. We really appreciate all the effort. And looking at those pictures too, it's really nice to see everybody garnishing their food like that and putting that little extra effort into it. That's what really is going to set you apart once you get into industry is, a lot of people will serve just a plain item. But to make a little bit more money and make that food a little bit more appealing, we get into garnishes. And so great job, everybody. We are going to move forward into our presentation tonight. If anybody has any comments regarding the week 5 assignment, certainly reach out to myself or Chef Suzanne. We'll be glad to discuss them with you. But right now we are going to move forward so we can get to Chef Suzanne's pancakes. Yes, it's critical. So let's take a look at our weekly presentation over here. Make sure that you complete the mid-course survey. When you first get into industry, and I know Chef Suzanne can back me up on this one, when you first get into industry, if somebody has something to say about your kitchen, your staff, the way things are being run, you take a lot of offense to it. But the older you get, the wiser you become, and the more feedback that we get, the better we can take that and use it as a tool to improve our program. So we would really appreciate that. And don't forget, it does count towards extra credit at the end of the course. So hang in there. If you have fallen behind in this course, fear not. Don't run and hide. Chef Suzanne and I are here to help you succeed. And sometimes it can be a little difficult to get a hold of some of you, but if you guys can make it a priority to answer your phone, because the only reason we're calling is to help you out and see how you're doing and see what we can do to make it better for you. So please do that. And if you want to get ahead in this course, we're here. We want to help you. Please, everybody, make sure that you are posting attendance at least every 4 days by completing an activity on the class page. When you fail to post attendance, you take away needed support for other students. We have a pretty good sized class load, and when we get bogged down chasing a number of students about posting attendance, it takes away from the students that we would normally be working with that are asking for help. So we're asking for your help by please making sure that you're posting attendance at least every 4 days. Drop a knowledge check, conversions knowledge check, read the research materials, answer the questions, watch a live session archive, submit an assignment, lots of activities that can be done. And for the past couple of weeks, we've sent out recommended prep list. So, hey, there you go. That recommended prep list also gets you through all of the week without any challenges. And this class rocks. So great job. We are impressed through week 6. It's pretty rare that Chef Suzanne and I get a class of this quality. And we get a lot of great students in our classes, and we're really blessed. But when we get a lot of great students in one class, it's a real blessing. And so all of you are making our jobs really fun, and you guys make us look forward to working with you. So thank you, everybody, for all the effort that you have put in. You have anything to tag on to that, Chef Suzanne?
Y'all make us look good. That's what it is. That's why we like it. Y'all make us look good.
That's what it's all about right there. Yeah, that's what it's all about. But I think there's going to be a lot of successful future chefs in this class, and proud that they're in our classroom. On to our next subject. We talked a little bit previously about the American Culinary Federation. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with it from a distance. We do recommend that you do get involved in the American Culinary Federation. You are in a massive industry. This is one of the largest industries in the country. However, the networking of this industry is rather small and rather tight. And you can either be in the center of the networking and enjoy the success, or be on the outskirts looking in. The ACF is the organization that we all network within. And we've all heard of Certified Executive Chef or Certified Master Chef. The American Culinary Federation is the only organization in the United States that performs that type of certification. So highly recommend it. This is just a brief clip that we're going to watch for just a moment about the American Culinary Federation.
Feed your passion for food. Propel your career. Make a difference in your community. Join the American Culinary Federation today.
I wouldn't be where I am today without the ACF. The networking and the education over the years have got me to where I am today.
Feed your passion for food. ACF is the premier culinary organization promoting the professional image of American chefs worldwide. Being a member means networking one-on-one with the finest, most thoroughly trained chefs and expanding your knowledge through education, certification, and competition.
Being a member to me of the ACF gives you opportunities that you would never get anywhere else. The talent that you meet in competitions, at conventions, at ACF events is just amazing to see the talent, networking, because the industry is so large, but the network is so small. You network today for opportunities tomorrow.
As a member, you'll have access to digital versions of our award-winning publication, the National Culinary Review, and Sizzle, a quarterly magazine for students and culinary educators. You'll also receive our bi-weekly e-newsletter called the Culinary Insider and gain access.
All right, that's enough of that video. But this video will be posted on your class page, right down at the bottom of the class page following this live session. We're not connected to the ACF in any way, but just as a chef, and I'm sure Chef Suzanne will say the same thing, as a chef, it's a wonderful organization to meet other chefs, network, and once you get involved in that networking, you'll never be looking for a job, because you're always going to have a friend that's looking for somebody that needs help, and it's a great way to grow within the industry as well. You know, just because you graduate from Escoffier, which is a huge step one and a huge pat on the back, continuing education in this industry is critical. I still read, I still participate in ACF, I still take the tests and everything else because I'm still learning constantly. So if you get yourself in that habit, you will be much more successful in the long run in the industry. So take advantage of the ACF. It's a great organization. It's not very expensive to join. I think as a student, the annual fees are somewhere around, do you know, Chef Suzanne, is it $90 for a year?
That sounds about right. That sounds right.
Yeah, and that includes membership to your local chapter. There's local chapters in communities all over the United States. Most cities have a local chapter. There's meetings once a month where you get to go to other restaurants and check things out. Another huge benefit for the ACF is the competitions. Chefs like to compete, and being in formal competitions pays huge dividends. You also can win a few bucks in the competitions, which is kind of nice. You also get to travel. The more you win, the higher up the ladder you get, and then you get sponsorships from companies like Simplot and Nestle and all these other companies out there, and it's a really great way to meet other culinarians and build your career. So if anybody has any questions about ACF, I'm not tied, I don't work for the ACF, but you can certainly reach out to me and I can certainly point you in the right direction. Their website is acf.org. Great organization. Any questions about ACF, ladies and gents? Anybody? Let's move on. We got a hand up. Travis, what's going on, man?
Regarding the membership fee for the ACF, I just got my card in the mail as a member. And it was $82 as a student.
$82, okay. Yeah, thank you, Travis, for clarifying that. We were pretty close at 90. I mean, for some older chefs, I mean, that's pretty good. You got to give us a little credit there. Yeah,
A little bit.
$82 is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, once you start climbing the ladder, that means you make a little extra money, and that means they want a little extra money too. So, this is the way life goes. But as a student, definitely take advantage of it. Kenneth, what's going on, man?
All right, so what if you're already, not me, myself, I'm asking for somebody else. If you're already in the business and have been for a while, do you sign up as a professional or do you sign up as a student?
Definitely sign up as a student since you're in culinary school. It's a lot less expensive. Once you're in the organization, nobody knows whether you signed up as a student or as a professional. It's kind of anonymous. You just have a membership card, and that's it. So they're not going to look at you funny or anything, but it's just a huge difference. I think professional membership fee is right around $280.
Wow.
Yeah, versus $82. So it's, my preference of route. I would sign up as a student if I could. The only thing you can't do as a student is go for your certification, but that might be something you might want to wait on anyway.
Good deal. Thanks, Chef.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the ACF? All right, ladies and gents, let's move on to week 6 in CU 122. Taking a look at our class page this week. Mid-course survey is located right at the top of the class page, right underneath the week 6 banner. It's right there. If everybody could get that done as soon as possible, we would really appreciate it. The feedback really helps us grow, and the school's going through a lot of growth. We're getting bigger and bigger all the time, and so feedback is always good. And you're going to learn here shortly when you are in industry, and for those of you that are in industry, the answer to your challenges are oftentimes right in front of your face. So when you reach out to those around you for, hey, how can I make things better? The answer is usually right there, as life has proven itself.
Chef, that sounded like something on a fortune cookie. I wonder if anybody else heard that. That the answers to the questions are right in front of your face. Did anybody else get that cookie vibe?
All right, I ate Chinese food last night.
I'm just saying. I don't know if anybody else heard that, but I was like, whoa.
No,
That's deep. Like, that's fortune cookie deep, Chef.
That is fortune cookie. That is actually something I learned years ago, because when I first got into industry and I first became an executive chef, I was about 21, 22 years old at a hotel. And I knew more than anybody, and I was obviously put on the face of this earth to become the most wonderful chef ever, and I was going to solve all the problems within industry, and I had it all well within my grip. And it didn't take long for me to learn otherwise. And now I know sometimes asking is a great way to get some help. So, taking a look at the rest of the class page, research materials, make sure you take a look at them this week. There's 2 really good videos in there that we're going to take a look at later on regarding the assignment. The knowledge check this week is all in relation to the research materials. Week 6 conversions knowledge check. We do have a chart that is up there. And then thank you everybody for your attendance at our week 6 live session. That's fantastic. And then in the kitchen this week, we are working on muffin and biscuit methods. Very, very important. So that means tonight we're going to get a little bit into quick breads. Before we move too much further though, we'll mention this more than once, and I know Chef Suzanne has this on the tip of her tongue. We ask that everybody follow the recipes that are provided on the class page for this week. It's very, very important. We are not concerned about the recipes. We are concerned about you learning and understanding the techniques. The recipes that are provided on the class page for this week's exercise are examples of the actual techniques that we're trying to get you to understand. Because the techniques that you will learn this week, you will be utilizing in industry in one form or another. So it's extremely important. Please remember, in your experience in culinary school, recipes don't matter. That's just the end product of learning a technique. And the techniques are the most important things that you could walk with. Victoria, what's going on?
For the recipe for the biscuits, on the page where we submit, it says that we have to get a picture of the eggs folded in. There's no eggs in the recipe.
We'll get
I'm going to check that right now.
We'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
I think it's supposed to be
please.
milk.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, and that's got to be a typo. So
I've been holding off all day making them because I was like, I don't know where these eggs are supposed to be coming from. And I've never put eggs in biscuits before, so.
yeah, that's a new one to me as well. So, well, Chef Suzanne will make it a judge.
She is correct. It does indeed say eggs added into mixture.
So we'll just
you don't need
avoid that line.
Yeah, just
Okay.
we'll get that removed ASAP.
Yeah. Judge Suzanne has made a ruling, and she is determined. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Sometimes we miss little important details like that, but that's a whole nother. We're human. All right. Back to the class page. So we are into the kitchen with the muffins and the biscuits. And like I was saying, let's stick to the recipes this week. It'll make life a lot easier and a better quality product and a better learning of the technique. As far as conversions are concerned this week, this is an example that will provide you with some information regarding the weekly conversions, which are quite simple. Please remember these conversions may be getting annoying at this point, but once you are in industry, you are going to think back to Chef Warren and Chef Suzanne, and you're going to go, thank you. We really appreciate it. Because it's something that you're going to be utilizing on a daily basis, especially you're going to have a cook that comes up to you and says, hey, chef, this recipe calls for 24, and I only need 12. You'd be like, oh, no problem. I can scale that back in a heartbeat. So please, it is very valuable information about that. Our next topic is going to be gluten. Gluten, gluten, gluten. How many people out there avoid gluten? Does anybody? No? There's a lot of stuff out there today about eating gluten and not eating gluten and all that type of good stuff. Human beings have been consuming gluten since the inception of man, they think. And we have all lived quite well throughout those years. When I went to culinary school back in the 1980s, they had to pull us to the side and they said, hey, there's some people out there that have celiac disease and this is how you handle it. And those folks that have a gluten intolerance need that treatment because they're unable to break that protein down. So we have to be very conscientious of them once we are in industry and really respect that. But for the majority of us, there is no problems with eating gluten. Let's take a look at exactly what gluten is to get a better understanding. And gluten is basically found in flour, some other grains like rye, spelt, and barley. But it's basically two proteins, gliadin and glutenin, that when you add water to the flour, those two proteins combined when you start making the kneading motion. And that kneading motion creates strands of protein that we refer to as gluten. You need to think of gluten as the walls in the house. It creates the structure. It's also the foundation. Bread could not rise and hold its shape without gluten. It's very, very important. When you blow up a balloon, that balloon holds its shape because of the exterior, because of its structure. Gluten does the exact same thing. Gluten is, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's what creates the elasticity in bread. So that's a 1-second lecture on gluten and what it is. Today, unfortunately, a lot of food manufacturers are pulling gluten from the two proteins that are found in the flour, and they're adding it to other foods to create that structure within the foods, which has created a little bit of the protein shortage within the wheat industry, which is causing a little bit of issues now. But I think too, humans are beginning to consume a lot too much gluten because they're putting it in so many different foods as an additive now. So, you know, I always like to preach gut health and eating with, you know, reasonable amounts instead of, you know, gorging on something. It certainly will make you a little bit healthier. Does anybody have any questions about glutens? Alejandro?
Is gluten the protein itself or is it the bread itself?
Gluten is a strand of proteins. There are two different types of protein found in wheat, spelt, rye, and barley. Those two proteins, gliadin and gliadin, are when you add water and you begin to mix, those two proteins combine and create strands of what we call gluten. Gluten is what creates the structure in the bread and the elasticity. If you were to make a batch of bread dough and then take that bread dough to the sink and wash it and wash it and wash it, you would be left with what looks like a bunch of rubber bands. Those bunch of rubber bands are the strands of protein called gluten. Does that answer your question, Alejandro?
Yes.
Yes, cool. All right, ladies and gents. And I also know that we're working our way into quick breads this week, and we're starting to get curious about flours. We've all gone to the grocery store, and we'll buy pastry flour, all-purpose flour, and bread flour, and we always wonder why. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, they're ground differently, or they use different parts of this, and that's not the case. The difference in those three flours is the level of protein. We've all made a cake or a pie at some point in time, right? And that pie shell needs to be very, very flaky and tender. The cake needs to be tender. So we need to use a flour that creates less gluten. And that flour would be described as cake and pastry flour. So it has a low protein content. It's actually a little bit less than 9%, generally right around 8% of those two proteins, the gliadin and the glutenin. And henceforth, when you go to mix the dough, you create less glutens and the product is much more flaky. That's why we use cake and pastry flour. When it comes to all-purpose flour, we use all-purpose flour for a multitude of different things, some bread recipes, some pizza crust, for coating things. It's kind of our go-to guy in the kitchen. That has a protein content of right around 9 to 11%. So when you do start adding liquid and kneading that product, you do develop a marginal amount of gluten. However, when we go to create breads like baguettes, ciabatta, breads that have got a good chew to them, we want to use a flour that is very high in protein. And that flour is referred to as bread flour, and it usually has a protein content of anywhere between 11 and 13%. The only real flour that is ground differently is a 00 Capulta flour from Italy. And that's becoming a little bit more popular here in the United States. It's a very, very fine flour with a mild protein content of right around 10%. You'll probably start seeing a little bit more of that, but it does work into recipes a lot easier because of its size. Does anybody have any questions about flour? Thoughts, concerns? Did I miss anything, Chef Suzanne?
I don't think so. I think in a nutshell, what Chef was just talking about with the different types of flour is you want to try and get because I know this has come up in the chat already, and I've gotten some messages, and I'm sure Chef Warren has also gotten some messages. What if I can't find the certain flour that I need? And so basically, it does happen. There are suppliers or grocery stores wherever you may be getting your flours from that may not have exactly what you need. So you need to be aware that, if you can only find cake flour, not going to work for a substitute for bread flour because the protein levels are just, they're pretty different. So you want to try and make sure to choose a flour that is as close to what you need as possible, because just think about the texture of cake versus the texture of bread, right? They're both made with flour. They're both made with basically the same ingredients, but think about how different the texture, like you can do this and end up with bread or a cake all over the counter. You can't, it's not gonna, whereas with bread, you have to tear it because of those gluten strands. So you can see the difference in the amounts of protein. So I know that that's come up, Chef, so I don't know if you want to talk about the substitutions or what they should do for these recipes this week.
If we have a recipe that calls for pastry flour, you can certainly use all-purpose flour. That's not going to affect it too much, but the key is if you have to substitute an all-purpose flour for a pastry flour, you need to be extremely conscientious of your mixing of the product. You need to bring it just together, because the more you mix that all-purpose flour, the more the glutens are developed and the tougher your end product is going to become. Whereas with pastry flour, you have a little bit more leeway because you have a lower protein content, so you'll develop less glutens. So if you do have to make a substitution from pastry to all-purpose, that's not a problem. It's all good. Just be very conscientious of how much you actually mix that product. Does that answer the questions, you think?
I think so. I think that definitely helped, and hopefully, did anybody good? I see some thumbs up, so that's always good.
Cool. Yeah, and if you guys have additional questions about this, just certainly reach out and ask us. And all this information is going to be on the class page, so it's all good. Sabina, what's going on? Sabina, do you have a question? Sabina. All right, Sabina, we'll come back to you as soon as you're
Is
ready.
it better?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
there you
I'm
go.
here.
Okay, hi.
Okay, sorry, just earpiece doesn't work. Okay, so you sort of answered my question, but so I've seen cake flour and I've seen pastry. I've seen cake flour. I've seen bread flour.
Mm-hmm.
Where, aside from like Restaurant Depot, where I buy my stuff for the kitchen that I work in, and buying like a giant vat of pastry flour. Where would you suggest finding it? I mean, would Whole Foods have it?
Whole Foods. I know Walmart carries it.
Pastry flour?
Pastry flour or cake flour, one of the two of them. And pastry flour and cake flour are going to be really close in their protein contents. So you're going to end up with a like product, whether the bag says pastry or whether the bag says cake. And there's a really very little difference between the two.
Okay, so if I can't find pastry, I'm cool with bread and cake.
It's not bread and cake, it's just cake. Bread is a separate flour. Bread flour is going to have the highest protein content of any of the flours, and that is the flour that we use to make the tough breads, the ciabattas and the baguettes. The cake flour, I always just think of the end product, right? So if it says cake flour, think of what a cake is. It's like Chef Suzanne was saying, if you were to pick it up and mush it with your fingers, you'd have crumbs everywhere, because that has little or no gluten that's been developed in it. So it's very, very tender.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Ladies and gents, on to the next chapter of our Week 6 live session. We're going to talk a little bit about quick breads. Quick breads are extremely prevalent in our society. We like to make a lot of banana breads, soda breads, brownies, cookies, etc., etc. The biggest thing that you need to remember with quick breads is that from unlike a traditional bread that is leavened with yeast, right? Leavened is the ingredient in the dough that forces the dough to rise. A leavening agent traditionally will give off steam or some type of gas, such as carbon dioxide, that forces the bread to rise. Yeast takes a while to become active. Once it reaches between 90 and 100 degrees, it comes alive, and it begins to give off carbon dioxide and alcohol. If you smell a loaf of bread, it'll smell like alcohol. And that alcohol will cook off at about 176 degrees. And it's also a very time-consuming process to get that yeast to bloom and to rise. A quick bread usually uses a chemical form of leavener. A chemical form of leavener would be described as baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, which when mixed with warm water gives off carbon dioxide. Baking powder is also a chemical leavener that is sodium bicarbonate, the same as baking soda, that has been mixed with cream of tartar or tartaric acid. That acid was originally developed on the bottom of wine barrels many, many years ago, and they add it. So the basic rule of thumb, if a recipe has acid in it, then we can use baking soda. The acid could be lactic acid from milk. The acid could be some type of citrus or other things. Even brown sugar has a little bit of acid in it, which gets the baking soda to kick. Baking powder would be used in recipes that don't have an acid in it. So that's the difference between those two. Let's take a look at some other leavening agents. We had this slide last week, and I threw it in again this week, just as a refresher for everyone. Leavening agents are a big thing in our industry. Once again, a leavening agent is what gives the bread the ability to rise by giving off a steam or a gas or alcohol. A traditional bread uses yeast, whereas a quick bread traditionally is chemically leavened with baking powder or baking soda. Chocolate chip cookies, they do have some baking powder in there, but we also use eggs and butter. That butter, when it gets hot, gives off steam and forces the cookie to rise. Eggs, when they get hot, we cooked omelets last week, and I'm sure many of you noticed that some of those omelets rose. We call that souffle. When the egg kind of pops up a little bit in the pan, well, that's the same thing that's happening during the leavening process when we utilize eggs. Any questions about that? So a quick bread, once again, is going to be defined as a bread that is leavened with a chemical leavener. It can be prepared very quickly, hence the name quick bread, and without requiring time-consuming, highly skilled people to do it, and a climate-controlled area that a yeast-type bread requires. So some examples of quick breads would include cakes and brownies, muffins, biscuits, banana bread, beer bread, biscuits, cornbread, muffins, pancakes, scones, and soda bread are all classified as being quick breads. So when you are in industry and they say, hey, we need a quick special, can you come up with something great for breakfast tomorrow morning? Hey, maybe you want to throw together a quick bread like a scone or something like that, because it doesn't take much time. Any questions about quick breads, ladies and gents? Anybody? Chef Suzanne, do you have anything to add about quick breads?
I do not. I'm answering some good questions in the chat too, so we're rocking today. I'm loving this.
I love it. That's awesome. All right, ladies and gents, we're going to take a quick look at the video this week. Willie, what's your question, bud?
Chef, just a quick question. When you guys say follow a recipe, does that mean exactly to the T, no adding anything to them?
No, not this week. If you want to add something in addition to the recipe, please make a batch, pull out, cook off what is required for the assignment, and utilize the remainder of the batch to do whatever you would like with.
Okay.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because it's real. This week we're really looking for things like tunneling in the bread, where you get these long, elongated holes in the bread. We're looking for leavening, proper leavening. We're also looking for proper mixing techniques, and sometimes that can be difficult to do when there's lots of other things going on in there. So this week we're asking you to keep it pretty straightforward. So we're going to take a quick look at this video. We're going to skip through it. I'm going to talk at a couple of different points as we're going through it. This part's boring, so we're going to skip it.
Which are elongated holes inside the muffin. Blueberry muffins are a classic crowd favorite. The blueberries add a wonderful flavor and color, and the sweetness of the batter complements the fruit in a delicious way. First, we're going to sift the dry ingredients together. We've got our flour.
It is critical that you sift when it comes to making this product. If you don't sift, you're going to end up mixing a lot more to smooth everything out. So please remember to sift. It's very, very important.
Dry ingredients together. We've got our flour. sugar, salt, and our baking powder. And again,
for those of you that don't have a traditional pastry sifter at home, one of those cups that you squeeze and it comes out the bottom, she's using what we call a pasta basket, or some type of strainer device will work just fine for this as well.
And we just want to make sure that we're evenly dispersing the salt, the sugar, the baking powder in the flour itself. Not sifting, you'll have a much more dense finished product.
Sifting creates aeration in the product, and what we mean by that, when you sift the products together, you incorporate a lot of air into your dry ingredients, which will help create a much lighter product in the end.
So put that aside. Then we're going to combine our wet ingredients. So that'll be our eggs, melted butter, vanilla.
When you mix your melted butter and your eggs together, make sure that your eggs are not super cold, because melted butter doesn't like super cold eggs.
And our milk. We're just going to whisk this just to combine.
However, you also need to remember that baking powder and baking soda are heat activated. So if you have really warm ingredients when you're making your batter, you're going to begin releasing the gas prematurely. And when you get in the oven and you start the baking process, you're going to end up with a flatter product.
One of the unique aspects of the muffin method is that it's always going to use a liquid fat. So in this case, it's melted butter. If you choose to use shortening, you would also melt that. I'm going to take the dry ingredients. Again, we're going to put a well in the center. We're going to add our liquid. And we're going to want to use a spatula because it's more gentle. If we use a whisk, the whisk is going to whisk all the volume right out of this mixture. Real gentle. And as you can see, I'm going around the sides of the bowl and kind of up and inward with it as I mix.
That's called folding, when you start from the outside and you pull it into the inside.
I'm going to keep doing this till we don't see unincorporated flour, but it'll still have volume. Then we're going to add our blueberries. If your blueberries are a little wet, you can always toss a little bit of flour in them. This will help keep them from sinking straight to the bottom of your muffins. There you go. All right. And again, just real gentle with incorporating the fruit in. I would also recommend resisting the temptation to add more fruit than the recipe calls for. It can weigh down your batter. So we're evenly in, the blueberries are still intact. They're uniformly in. From there, we're going to take our prepared muffin tins. You could spray them if you want with pan spray, or we can use muffin liners. You do want to use a portion scoop to make sure that each muffin is uniform and even.
If you don't, a portion scoop, what she's referring to, traditionally in industry, we'll use an ice cream scoop. Most kitchens have a wide variety of different ice cream scoops, and that's what she's referring to as. If you don't have one, you can just get away with using a regular teaspoon or soup spoon.
Size. Also, so they bake evenly.
So what she just said is extremely critical. If you have different size muffins in your muffin pan, they're not all going to cook at the same time, so you'll end up with some that are dry, some that are moist.
Bake at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes until a toothpick in the center comes out clean.
So that's real super simple to check the doneness of the muffins. You're going to take a wood skewer or a toothpick, you stick it in. If it pulls out and it's nice and clean, your muffins are done. She also, if you're not going to use a muffin liner or a pan liner is what they're called, or a cupcake liner also, they go by that name, make sure that you do use pan spray in there. So it's very, very important. A couple of things that she talked about that were extremely critical. Number one, make sure that you sift your ingredients. Sifting the ingredients adds air. Number two, make sure that you thoroughly mix your wet ingredients on the side, create a well, and then fold them in to the batter. Don't stir with the whisk, fold from the outside in just until all of the white mixture, the dry mix, goes away. Number three, make sure that you use an ice cream scoop or some type of other similar sized utensil to scoop the muffin batter into the muffin pan, and make sure that they are all the same size so they bake at the same amount of time. You can even use a measuring cup. That works quite well as well. Then number two, 350 degrees at 20 minutes, toothpick in and out. Does anybody have any questions? Kenneth, what's up?
All right, so 350 for 20 minutes-ish. In the video, she puts her pan on the top rack. What's the difference in the top rack and the rack next to the bottom?
Always go middle rack, right? Always go middle rack. And so good catch on that. I don't know why she did that. I can't explain that, but it should be on the middle rack. That's where you're going to find the most uniform heat in the oven. So that's a good catch. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. It's real important. We cannot tell you exactly how long the muffins are going to take. It's 20 minutes-ish. And the reason for that is it'll depend on your elevation because of the atmospheric pressure, and also the consistency of your muffin batter. You have to remember that a cup of flour in Tucson, Arizona behaves much differently than a cup of flour in Miami, Florida. And a lot of that has to do with the level of humidity that's in the air. So if you're in a really humid area like Miami, it's going to absorb a lot of that humidity into the flour, so you're going to have to add additional flour. Whereas in Tucson, we're a very dry climate, so hey, they're two different things. So be conscientious of that. I don't think you'll have any problems with this recipe. So Alejandro, what's your question, bud?
When it comes to baking, it has to be an exact science. You have to weigh it instead of measure it by volume, right?
Okay, great question. The majority of the time that we bake in industry, we do everything by weight. Baking is not one of those things where you can weigh it. Baking is not one of those things where you can eyeball it. Baking is not one of those things where you can kind of just think you have enough. Baking is an exact science. When we bake, we weigh our eggs, we weigh our liquids, we weigh our flour. So volume measurement in industry is pretty rare in bakeries. We do everything exactly by weight. And a lot of bakers will use grams versus ounces because it's a lot more exact. Does that answer your question, Alejandro?
Yes, and when it comes to specific flours for specific things like the muffins, does it have to be those specific flours only?
Highly recommended because of the protein levels like we discussed. So if you're going to make muffins with bread flour, you're going to end up with a bread-like muffin. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, because you don't want to overdevelop the glutens. Please be aware of the fact too, for the muffin recipe and for the biscuit recipe, you need to be very, very gentle when you're working these doughs. Do not get in there and start whisking and jamming out, Don't turn on, some kind of music and start rocking out while you're whipping your batter, because otherwise you're going to overdevelop those glutens, and it's a very delicate dough. Any other questions? All right, ladies and gents, let's look at biscuits here real quick for just a minute. The first thing that we see in that video is a biscuit cutter. There are a multitude of substitutions available for biscuit cutters. A biscuit cutter is simply a round object that's traditionally about 2 inches in width. It depends on the size of biscuit that you want. They come in a lot of different sizes. If you don't have one, I've seen a lot of people that get creative with substitutions. They can use a glass, and they can push the glass down on top of it and come out with a fairly uniform shape. I saw one guy with a tuna can. You know, he cut the top and the bottom off the tuna can and sanitized it, and that was it. I thought, wow, great use of a tuna can. And, you know, so you can get creative as far as the object. A lot of times in industry, we'll use a piece of PVC pipe that we cut into the 2-inch width and 2-inch height, and that will work just as well.
Coated in flour and dispersed throughout the dough. When the fat leavener, such as baking powder. The distinction of the biscuit method is to have small pieces of fat coated in flour and dispersed throughout the dough. When the fat melts in the oven, the steam captured in the little pockets gives lift and rough.
Please remember that you will have some small chunks of fat dispersed throughout the dough. So you're not trying to thoroughly incorporate that fat, whether it be butter or lard, into your biscuit dough.
Rise to the product, creating a flaky texture. This means that using cold butter is one of the most important aspects of this method. To begin, preheat the oven to 425 degrees. So first we're going to start with sifting our dry ingredients together.
425 degrees, which means you cannot bake your muffins and your biscuits in the same oven at the same time.
Start with the flour. Add our salt. Our chemical leavener. And our sugar. We want to get them all in.
Kenneth, what, do you still have a question?
Yeah, she's all right. I'm from the South, and we don't put sugar in our biscuits down here. Okay,
I know.
Is this going to be like a sweeter type of biscuit, or are we going to notice that much of the sugar in there?
I don't think there's enough sugar in that recipe to make a big difference. A lot of times these bakers will add sugar because it balances out the other flavor. Because we taste 5 things on our palate, right? Umami, savory, sweet, bitter, and the one other item, salt. And when you add the sugar, it kind of helps balance that flavor out a little bit better. And so that would be my assumption as to why that's in this recipe.
Okay, I feel better.
Not sweet like a scone.
Right. Okay, good. All right.
And here too, so that they're evenly dispersed. You don't want to have a clump of baking powder sitting on top. We want it evenly throughout the bowl. So we got our sifted flour. Then we're going to take our cold fat, which we've cut into cubes. We're gently going to coat the butter in the flour and then start breaking it up into small pieces until it looks like coarse cornmeal.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with what a pastry cutter is. They are available at Walmart. It's a handheld thing, and it's got some like lines on it, and that's really effective when it comes to working with biscuits. Alejandro, what's your question? Alejandro.
I had it, but I lost it.
All right, you come back when it comes back to you. You come back to us.
All right.
All right. Donald, what's up?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I have found that when making biscuits, freezing the butter and then using a grater to grate it works wonders for creating a super flaky biscuit.
That's a great technique. I've heard that one before. And that's something to consider for the future. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Donald. Let's go back to our video here.
So, you can also use shortening if you want. Just make sure that you chill the shortening just like you did with the butter. Get our fat dispersed in our flour. We'll make a little well in the center of the bowl. We're going to take the milk, pour it right in the center. We're just going to slowly combine the two. just till about just combined. I'm just going to dust your bench a little bit. And
please take note about how much she worked that dough. She just barely brought the ingredients together. The more that you mix it, the more that you try to make it perfect, the more glutens you're going to develop, and you don't want glutens.
And then we'll finish working the product just gently and fold it together until combined. We're going to get that all in there. Then we're going to roll out the dough. Be real gentle with your rolling pin. Right? We don't want to overwork the dough, but about 3/4 of an inch thick. Okay. So you have your cutter, and you do want to place them as close as possible because this is not a dough that you can work over and over again. All right. So just straight down, side by side with your cutter. All right. Just lightly brush the tops with butter then. Or just the tops. We don't want it dripping down the sides. Otherwise, the butter will actually kind of catch on the dough on the side and pinch it as it bakes, and then they won't rise straight up and down. Place the pan in the oven and bake at 425 degrees for about 15 minutes until golden brown in color. They should ideally be twice as tall as they were going into the oven.
So that's the lowdown on biscuits. And that's a fairly decent technique. And I know there's kind of a problem with doing biscuits because it's such a regional dish here in the United States. And there are certain parts of the country where you do the biscuits a certain way, otherwise you're going to pay the piper. And so just really focus on learning the technique. It's a really critical thing. It's like making tortillas here in Tucson, Arizona, above the Mexican border. There is a very specific way that we prepare them. And if we were to prepare them that way somewhere else, we'd probably, we'd be in trouble. So it's a very regional thing. Alejandro, what's up?
When she said to use butter, can you use margarine instead, or must it be butter?
No, it's a big difference. You should actually never ever touch margarine. You maybe use it to wax your car, but margarine is it's a chemically fortified substance. We're not sure exactly what's in it, and I don't think the people that make it know what's in it either. Butter is 80% fat, 20% other ingredients, which include milk solids, water, and whey protein. So you want to make sure that you stick with that. Margarine has a very high moisture content, so your biscuits will rise quite a bit, but then they're going to fall quite a bit as soon as that steam escapes. So definitely try to avoid using margarine at all costs. That's a great question, Alejandro. I appreciate that because there are sometimes people that want to, cross-utilize butter and margarine, and they just don't work. They're not even in the same family. So be conscientious of that as well. Any questions about biscuits? Anyone? All right, ladies and gents, Chef Suzanne, it's almost pancake time.
I'm so ready. You just don't even know.
Well, see, you started talking about that, and then you showed the pictures. Now guess what I have to have for dinner?
I'm telling you, you just do not even know. All day long, pancakes all day long. And I wasn't making them. I've been looking at them, which makes me want them. If I was making pancakes all day, the last thing I'd want to see is a pancake. But looking at pancakes all day, I need pancakes.
I just signaled out to the kitchen to turn the flat top on, right? Because we're going to throw down here in just a moment. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at our assignment page for week 6 in CU 122. Muffin method. We learned about that. We mixed our wet ingredients and then our dry ingredients. Very, very important. So don't forget to do that. And then just barely mix your ingredients. If you are not using a cupcake or muffin liner, make sure that you spray the pan. 20 minutes, 350 degrees. Make sure that you use the requested flour. It's very, very important. And then the biscuit method. Make sure that you cut that fat just like she did. Just work it into your dough. There will still be some small chunks. Do not use a KitchenAid mixer for biscuits. That is not good. Yeah, because otherwise Kenneth is down there like, yeah, you do that in the South, you're going to have issues, right? That's right. That's right. So make sure that you do work the dough by hand. It's very, very important. It'll really affect the end quality of your product. 450 degrees, I think is what she said, 15 to 20 minutes, nice golden brown on that. Do not forget your narrative sheet this week. It will come into play when you're in industry. I know it's kind of a hassle to fill it out, but trust me, it's something that's going to pay dividends when you are communicating with your staff. Don't overmix your dough. It'll lead to a chewy product. Follow the directions in the video. Remember, the group of leaveners referred to as chemical leaveners include baking powder and baking soda. Sabina, what's up?
So, 2 questions. Silicone muffin pan versus the metal one, does it matter?
They're going to bake at different temperatures for different lengths, but if you want to use a silicone mat, that's perfectly fine for the muffins. Or if you want, if you want to use a silicone muffin pan, that's perfectly fine. And if you want to use a silk mat for your biscuits, that's perfectly fine as well.
Okay, and then when she was making her muffins, what was that paper stuff?
That's paper that's cut out of a parchment, but you can also buy a similar style at Walmart.
Okay, because I like those. I don't like the little.
Yeah, the traditional ones.
Little crinkly. Those are pedestrian.
Yeah, those are the ones that she did are the hip ones today, but next week, who knows? Yeah.
Those are so cool.
Yeah, they are. Great. Thanks for the question. I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any questions? Anyone else? Ladies and gents, I want to leave you with a couple of quick thoughts. Remember, we talked about the ACF tonight. If anybody wants additional information, I'll be glad to help you. Remember, the website is acf.org. You guys rocked the house on week 5. That was some incredible food that we saw. Chef Suzanne and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We also talked about posting attendance. It's extremely critical, at least every 4 days. When we have to stop and look for you to see if you're doing okay, you pull time from students that really need the help. And Willie, what's going on?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So we can use the mixer for the muffins, but we cannot use it for the biscuits. Is that correct?
I would not use the mixer for the muffins either. And the reason for that is the development of the glutens. You want those muffins to be light, airy, and very tender.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, I want to jump in real quick before we leave. Make sure that you are following the recipes this week. This is, like Chef said, if you want to do something fancy and you want banana nut, that's all fine and dandy, but I need to see the ones from the assignment. And also something that I saw this week, would love to see the beautiful plates, absolutely, but make sure with your beautiful plates that you're giving the needed pictures. A great example is if you did some fun stuff on your pancakes, but didn't show me any pictures of your plain pancake and your cut open pancake, all I saw was the beautiful garnished pancakes covered with whipped cream and fruit. I couldn't see the assignment. And so like with biscuits, if you want to make some sausage gravy, because that's your thing when you make biscuits, that's great. Have those pictures at the end. Make sure that you're getting the pictures that I need to see first, and then put in some pictures of your beautifully garnished and sausage gravy coated biscuits. But make sure that you have all the needed photos first.
Yeah, do some with the gravy, because that way after next week's live session, I can go out and get biscuits and gravy. Yeah, because I have a feeling this class is going to rock this one as well. That's very, very important. Great words of advice. Make sure you follow the recipes this week. We need to make sure that you understand the techniques, and that's what it's about. Willie, what's up?
I'm sorry. I guess this is for Chef Suzanne. I guess I was under the impression, I saw so many good pictures and stuff in the past that I might be one of the ones you said that added ingredients, because I added blueberries to my pancakes. Did I get the points deducted for the blueberries? Did I add anything?
I don't know. I don't think I would have unless it affected the texture and the appearance of your pancakes. So I just have to be really aware to make sure that you're meeting all the criteria and that it ends up okay in the middle. But I don't think that I took off for any of that because there were some folks that added some extras like blueberries or chocolate chips. Just to be really careful that you're meeting the assignment first because technique is key. Presentation and adjusting to make things different for family and trying new stuff. Love that. Just make sure you're hitting the criteria for the assignment.
Okay, because I cut them in half. I just put a blueberry topping and some cream on top. So, okay.
It's kind of hard not to when you make pancakes, though.
Very hard.
Yeah. So we understand. No worries. We're just really focused on this week's assignment because we really want to make sure that everybody understands the leavening agents and the mixing methods. Adrian, what's up? Adrian. All right. Adrian went away. Ladies and gents, please do not forget to take the mid-course survey. As we've talked about several times, we really appreciate all the great feedback we can get from you. And once again, if you're a little concerned about where you're at in this course, talk to us. We're here to help you. We want to see everybody succeed. And I think in this class, we're going to have a lot of success because we are on track. Adrian, what's going on, man?
Can you hear me, Chef?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering, I know that pretty much this week we're pretty much following the recipe.
Correct.
But is there a possibility that if we follow the recipe on one and then for another, if we do, say for example, if we're doing the biscuits, if we do cheddar biscuits, is that possible? As long as we add our primary.
110%. The number one thing that we have to do this week, if we make a batch of biscuits, you need to cut a biscuit and that one needs to be cooked off and that one needs to be shown for the assignment. This way Chef Suzanne can have a clear understanding that you know the technique. And then if you want to do cheese or if you want to add bacon to them, if you want to add chives to them, whatever the case, in the remainder of your batch, that's no problem.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chef.
You're welcome. And if anybody has any more questions about that throughout the week, if something pops up, give us a call, give us a holler. Both of our numbers and contact information are on the right-hand side of the class page. We are here at your service, and we enjoy speaking with all of you. So I wish everyone a happy and safe week. Have a good time in the kitchen, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.